favorite DFS plays in each price range and the odds that have nice prices on tonight's 3-game slate. So we will start with which center over $6,000 are you going with tonight, Garion?
Yeah, not going to make things too complicated at center. I'm just going to go with Nikola Jokic. Last 10 games he's played without Michael Porter Jr. in the lineup. 33% usage rate, averaging over 1.7 DraftKings points per minute played. Triple doubles on back-to-back games. Is he going to be chalky? Very possibly. Although I will say, even on a slate this small, the center position is kind of stacked. So I'm just putting Jokic in there to start, and I'll figure out the rest later.
Nick, does his price make you think twice, though?
I mean, not really. I mean, like Garion highlighted, he's been on fire. And as much as I want to go and say you should get a little exposure to a B tonight if you're using multiple lineups, I really can't make that case. But if you are looking to save a little bit of money, I do like Jakob Poeltl on the other side of this lineup, because when you look at the past performances of opposing centers, Jonas Valanciunas, I know he's been having a good year, but still 27-11 last game. Vucevic the game before, 20-10. Randall 24-7-8 the game before that. Even Wendell Carter Jr. had a solid game against Jokic. And then when you look at Poeltl, he's flirting with a double-double every night. You look at his season averages. He has 3 double-doubles recently, and he's returning 5 times value on this price over his last 10 games. Even his season average is right around there too. So if you're trying to save some money, I know Jokic isn't the guy to save on, but Hurtl's still a guy who you can put in a utility spot too.
Is Jokic a no-brainer? Matty, coming off back-to-back triple-doubles?
I think he would be, but I actually think there's at least a 20% chance he doesn't play tonight.
Whoa.
Jokic had that wrist injury that kept him out for a few games, and he was on the injury report yesterday with a forearm injury. Not sure if that's directly related, but he just played an overtime game in New Orleans. Now they're going into San Antonio, second night of a back-to-back. He's clearly not 100%. Whether that actually matters in terms of his effectiveness, I think it probably doesn't. Like, he's, in my mind, by far the best player in the NBA, even in a season where Steph Curry is doing all the crazy things he's doing. But I think that Denver has got to be a little worried about his health. So I think he most likely plays. And if he does, I think he's the best choice. Although I do think Poeltl is a decent choice too. But this slate is going to look a lot different if Nikola Jokic is not on it. So it's kind of TBD. But if he's out there, I definitely like him a lot.
For sure. Another reminder to follow DK Live on Twitter, everybody, for the most up-to-date updates when it comes to which players will be playing and which players will not be playing. Nick, at forward, which player do you like over $6,000?
I really don't like the forward position much at all tonight. If you're going to pay up, obviously you want to go with LeBron. To me, is the obvious choice. Of course, he's the most expensive forward available. But when you look at what the Grizzlies have done against opposing forwards, not that great. If Embiid doesn't play, and the only reason I would think that is because it's a back-to-back, then Tobias Harris becomes a viable option. But this is the position where I try and save a little bit and spend up maybe at center, and then maybe spend up a little bit at guard. Go with guys like Rudy Gay or Royce O'Neal. You could go with both. I hesitate to say both, but either way, they're big-time salary savers. And then we look at the 76ers have done. I know both teams are coming in off back-to-back, but the 76ers are not good against opposing forwards either. So these are two guys that could go and at least give you the value on their price.
Matt, you in the same boat as Nick here? Not a fan of this position?
Yeah, although if Embiid does sit also, and I do think that that's a real possibility, then Tobias Harris does look very appealing. So I totally agree there. I think the guy that most people are going to play here is Dillon Brooks. He definitely takes on a much larger role with Ja Morant out, but Brooks is someone who can pick up a lot of fouls really quickly because he's someone who's generally tasked with guarding the opponent's best player. Last night, that was Luka Doncic. He got in a little foul trouble. Tonight, that's probably LeBron. So I think some other Memphis guys may be saving some money. There's John Conchar, who's guard forward eligible, 3,500. I think this is the position where you just play someone way off the board, unless we get some news, because then things could change. Maybe you get Tobias Harris, looks really good. But as it stands, I think this is the position where someone like Conchar, maybe someone like Desmond Bane's down to guard only, so I can't even pick him. Yeah, I'll just stick with Conchar. That's the pivot off Brooks, maybe, where he could step in if Brooks gets in foul trouble.
Garrett, hook me up with a forward north of $6,000.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think Dillon Brooks is someone who does get in a lot of foul trouble, and so does his teammate, Jaren Jackson Jr. Like, you essentially have a situation with Memphis where you like both of those guys regardless of the matchup. It's really just about their foul trouble and whether or not they can stay on the court long enough to accumulate fantasy points. I mean, Jaren Jackson Jr., on a per-minute basis, from an efficiency standpoint, has been an amazing DFS asset since Ja Morant went down. It's just that some nights he only plays 27, 28 minutes. I think he should be in line to play a bunch tonight against the Lakers. And Los Angeles is a team very susceptible to power forwards in particular. They've given up the second most opponent points in the paint per game so far this season. So I think Jackson could be in line for a pretty big night if he's able to stay on the court. He's gone over 40 DraftKings points in 3 of his last 5 games. It's just about whether or not he's actually able to play 35 minutes. But I like his price point and I like his potential at 7K.
Guys, less than 2 minutes to go in the show, so we'll wrap it up here. Matt, hook me up with a guard north of 6K.
So I think this is the position where I'm most inclined to just play the popular play, and that's Derek White. So Keldon Johnson got hurt the other night against the Knicks, and the Spurs are just kind of thin. I mean, there's some guys that they're giving 10, 15 minutes to off the bench, but as far as their main scorers, it's DeJounte Murray and it's Derek White. They don't have a ton else. And if Jokic isn't out there, I think it's the low-key consequence there is that Denver's defense gets a lot worse. And they also have to play a lot faster because there's no backup center on this team. Like when Jokic doesn't play, you see Jeff Green and JaMychal Green handling the center minutes. So it's much worse interior defense. It's a faster game because there's more guards, a smaller group on the court. But either way, I think White just has to step into a larger role with no Keldon Johnson, maybe a couple extra minutes. He played really well against the Knicks, so he could be really popular. But I think it's still worth at just a little bit over 6K. I think that's too cheap for White.
Garion, hook me up in 10 seconds.
Yeah, White's the play, but I will shout out DeJounte Murray, over 50 DraftKings points in 6 of his last 10 games. He leads the team in usage rate and in potential assists per game. He could also see a little usage bump with Keldon.
Nick, you have 10 seconds as well.
DeJounte Murray is the guy that I like White, but DeJounte is the guy I'm totally comfortable paying up for.